When people watch that footage, when they see that massive concrete slab of an interstate highway suddenly twist and plunge, they see brute force, but they don't see me, Frank Kowalski, the man they call the Iron Hand, sitting in the cab. They don't see the 6 weeks of meticulous planning that led to that moment. They just see the destruction. But this was a surgical removal, not a demolition. This I-70 overpass was an ancient, crumbling span, and my job was to take down a 35-ton central slab, the equivalent of a dozen semi-trucks, in a single, precise, controlled mechanical drop, all within a 6-hour overnight window. We couldn't use explosives because we were too close to active rail lines and major fiber optic cables, so the pressure was all on me. I had to carve out the anchor points, leave an engineered hinge of only a few select strands of rebar, and then, from 20 feet up, deliver the final defining strike. The slab absolutely had to rotate and fall exactly into the shallow impact attenuation pit we had dug in the median strip. An error of even 1 foot meant a catastrophic rebound, potentially throwing concrete 50 feet in the air or destabilizing the span I was sitting on. The weight of that responsibility is what makes me meticulous. I learned decades ago that in this job, precision is survival. After a small early mistake nearly caused a disaster, I realized then that a master operator doesn't just move levers. He understands the geometry of failure, knowing exactly how and where a structure wants to die. My first task was the slow, deliberate work of setting the stage, carving away the asphalt and the non-structural concrete to isolate the core slab. I worked with 200-page blueprints and Dr. Chen's structural analysis, which identified the precise shear point where the concrete and rebar would cleanly fracture. This became my cut line. I used a hydraulic shear and then a precise hydro hammer, cutting right up to that line, but not through it, carefully sculpting the final line of resistance. Every movement was slow, measured, and calculated to avoid stressing the structure prematurely. For 2 grueling hours, I worked in the constant, high-pitched screech of steel against concrete, relying on the machine's pitch to tell me if I was fighting an unexpected load. The tension was immense, not just from the job, but from knowing the crew standing in the safety zone was counting on me to keep the entire monolithic slab perfectly balanced on that fragile engineered hinge. When I could finally see the isolated clusters of rebar, the handful of steel rods that were the only thing connecting the slab to the rest of the world, I stopped and prepared for the final terrifying move. The highway was empty and dark below, and the only sound was the low, powerful rumble of the excavator. I mounted the heaviest, bluntest digging bucket and positioned the arm for a vertical strike. There was no room for hesitation, no chance for a second pass. I leaned forward, engaged the piston, and slammed the bucket down hard and fast, striking the last supporting column and snapping the rebar hinge. The immediate response wasn't a crash, it was a profound guttural groan that resonated from the heart of the bridge, followed by the metallic shriek of the final high-tension cable snapping. The enormous slab immediately began its rotational plummet, falling inward exactly as planned. But the noise was instantly swallowed by a massive, blinding cloud of gray dust and pulverized rock that shot up from the impact site and completely engulfed my cab. In that blind moment, I was cut off from the world, relying solely on the vibration I could feel through the tracks. My focus was absolute, confirming that the shock wave had been cleanly absorbed and had not traveled back into the deck I was sitting on. I sat perfectly still, listening for the deep, reassuring thump of the material settling. Finally, the dust began to dissipate, revealing the vast slab resting perfectly in the pit. The adjacent highway and the remaining structure were clean. I let out the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The radio crackled with Rick's tense voice. "Alpha 1, report. Status? Did it hit the mark?" I replied with a weary, professional confirmation. "Control, target acquired. The Iron Hand lands clean." The engineers confirmed later that the drop was only inches from the center target, with zero measurable shock waves outside the designated zone. The job was done, and as the cleanup crew swarmed the debris, I looked at the vast empty space where the bridge had been, realizing that sometimes the most challenging and most satisfying work is not in building something new, but in precisely and safely removing the old to make way for the future. That's the legacy of the Iron Hand, the precision of the drop, the safety of the crew, and the controlled moment where massive structure gives way to nothing but air.